Hi, welcome to Grampus Chats. Today I'm joined by Professor Alan Smith and we're going to hear more about a day in his life. So Alan, tell me more about yourself.
Well, thank you for asking. I'm a paediatrician and I look after children who have problems with their chest. So I give clinical care to children with cystic fibrosis. I also do research in that area.
That's really interesting. Must be very busy days. So tell me more about your role in Grampus then.
Okay, well, I'm the chief investigator for GRAMPUS-CF, which is a strategic research centre. And if you ask me, do I do MRI scans or do I do measurements of inflammation? I don't do any of that. My job is more like the conductor of the orchestra. So we have some fantastic research teams. We have a team that are doing MRI, that's magnetic resonance imaging studies, to look at the physiology of the gut. We have another team looking at inflammation, another group who are focused on the microbiome, that's the whole population of germs that live inside our gut. We have a clinical team bringing together the symptoms, and then we have a bioinformatics and statistics team who are integrating all this information to give us the answers that we need.
That's many groups. I like your analogy of conductor bringing everything together. So as conductor then, what does a typical day in your job look like?
Well, I guess the short answer to that is that there isn't a typical day. Every day is different, but the sort of things that I have to do, I first of all have to get the funding to do the project, and that's done in collaboration with others, but it's my job to pull it all together. And then I'm responsible for making sure that we deliver the project according to the milestones that we've agreed. That means lots of meetings, it means a little bit of troubleshooting and firefighting when things crop up. One of the bits I enjoy the most really is working with the team, so supervising PhD students when our group gets together to discuss the work in progress and how it's going. And I really love the interaction with patients as well, because I think they've been our guide. They've pointed us in the direction of this research study, so any interactions with the patient community I think are particularly valuable.
On these days, even though they're varied, is there something you hear people ask you a lot about what you do, or?
I think from the patient point of view, it's interesting when we publish some work describing the symptoms that people with CF describe. From the tummy point of view, we put some of that on Twitter, and so many patients came back and said, yeah, I really recognize that. This is a typical day with CF. This is the CF guts that nobody really fully understands or talks about. So I think we've focused on an area that previously hasn't been addressed properly, and I think there's a lot of feedback from the patient community that yes, this is important to them, and they're very glad that someone's taking it seriously.
So earlier you mentioned that you enjoy working with teams such as PhD students and varied groups. Is there anything else you enjoy about working?
Well, as I mentioned, that working with the patient community is particularly helpful, and we've done that in all sorts of ways. So when we applied for the money to do this research, a patient was one of the co-applicants and contributed to how we wrote the grant application. We've been very fortunate in the patients that we've worked with. We have patients who've got expertise in education, which is really important. Those who've got expertise in marketing have helped us design our logos and worked with the patient community to come up with good branding, which was something I didn't understand before, but I know a wee bit more about now. So all of that has opened up areas to me that I was unfamiliar with, and it's been in education apart from anything else.
It's wonderful to hear patients being so involved in the project, and it sounds like you've got your hands stuck in the mud, as it were. So I guess that leads me to my next question of, people always see projects as these big scary things that you can't see the background of. So what would you say is a misconception of your role within a project or research in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting question, and when there's a press release for a piece of research, usually the scientist is walked into the laboratory, he has to put on a white coat and pose with a pipette, an instrument he or she may not have used for some years. So we do have, if you're chief investigator, you are, like I said, conducting the orchestra, but there are many, many exciting rewards from this. Some of it is seeing the progress of other people. So, you know, for example, in our previous research project, one of our PhD students did some great work. He's now a postdoctoral research fellow as part of our current project. So watching scientists and doctors who are doing science, what we call clinical academics, develop their careers and become the next generation of clinical scientist is fantastic, because it means that the problems that we can't solve, I can't solve in my professional lifetime, there'll be another generation who can address those coming through.
There really feels like there's a strong cultivation of community interested in this field, and it sounds like you've done very well building up that community. So what is one message that you'd give to people interested in getting involved in this field?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a really great question, and for doctors in training, it's a little bit difficult to know how to describe doctors in training, because if you say junior doctors, that sounds a bit disparaging. If you say doctors in training, it suggests that maybe they're not doctors. So just to clarify, doctors who are qualified and are training, completing their training, I'd really encourage them to consider doing some clinical research. I think it completely changes your perspective on the conditions that you look after. It allows you to form closer partnerships with patients, and it gives you a part of your working day where you are in control and you are planning, and you're not simply responding to what comes through the door and the next problem that you're presented with.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.